Hello and welcome to Split Screen. I'm John Aljets.
I'm Owen Poole.
And on today's episode, I'm going to take a look at Call of Duty Advanced Warfare.
And I'm going to take a look at indie title, This War of Mine.
And then after that, be sure to stick around because we're going to have a nice couch discussion along with two other fine gentlemen about war in video games. So stay tuned for that.
Enjoy.
Call of Duty Advanced Warfare is the 11th game in the franchise, and the second entry to be released for the newest generation of consoles. Like most of the previous entries, it introduces small changes in terms of gameplay, without straying too far from the standard that all previous games have followed. Question is, though, are there enough changes to warrant a full-price purchase? The single-player campaign is laid out in the same way as previous entries, with smaller firefights, bridging the gaps between big, Michael Bay-esque set pieces, meant to excite and keep you wanting more. While the action is fast-paced, the narrative itself is dull and rather predictable. About 15 minutes into the game, I had already guessed the big plot twist, and even Kevin Spacey couldn't save that. The big change in this entry are the exosuits, which introduce fun, new mechanics to the regularly stale, old gameplay. Whereas previous entries limited your use of cool toys and to specific moments in the campaign, the exosuits have abilities that can be used whenever, helping to keep the gameplay feel fast and fresh. Now, as you may have noticed already, I've been comparing this game to the previous entries within the franchise a lot. And this is largely because of the fact that it feels and plays almost identically outside of the exosuits. This is most apparent during the game's multiplayer modes. During my rather brief time with this mode, I had a hard time finding any real noteworthy differences between this game and Ghost, or even Black Ops 2. It's largely just the same game with a new coat of paint. So should you pick up Advanced Warfare? Well, if you already have Ghost, I wouldn't advise it. However, if you haven't bought a Call of Duty game since before Black Ops 2, now might be a good time to upgrade. You can get Call of Duty Advanced Warfare on Xbox One and 360, PS4 and PS3, and the PC. Now that I'm done with that, we're going to look at a completely different type of title. We're going to look at This War of Mine with Owen.
In war, not everyone is a soldier. The tagline for 11-bit Studios' game This War of Mine encompasses what the game is trying to accomplish well. There are countless games where the player steps into the shoes of a soldier. This War of Mine flips the script of the classic war video game by having you play a small group of civilians struggling to survive in a war-torn city. Loosely based on the 4-year siege of Sarajevo in 1992, the longest siege in modern war history, This War of Mine makes the player responsible for a small group of survivors holed up in a makeshift shelter. The only object is survival. The game is split into two parts, day and night. During the day, the game plays similarly to the Sims franchise, wherein you control your small group directly to see their daily needs, such as food, sleep, and some form of entertainment. The daytime also gives you the opportunity to craft things your group needs. The crafting system is relatively simple, with only a few different components to craft everything you could possibly need. The hard part, however, is gathering said materials. The second part of the game is the night sections, where you must send a member of your group out into the war-torn city to scavenge for materials. Each character has a limited inventory, so you have to plan ahead to prioritize what will be most useful to you the following morning. It is all controlled through a simple point-and-click interface. This War of Mine has very simple mechanics and a simple objective, but the game shines through the choices the player is forced to make. How far will you go to survive? Each nighttime scavenging mission gives you a choice of where to look. The areas are varied by type of resource, ease of access, and inherent dangers. Some areas are completely deserted, with little to no risk involved. But as the days and nights wear on, those areas become devoid of resources, and you will have to venture out into more dangerous places, with bandits, soldiers, and other survivors, some of which are more desperate than you. Will you steal or even kill for food, weapons, and medicine? All of the choices you make come up organically through gameplay. There are no static conversation wheels that branch the story off into different directions. You might run into a situation where you know there's a large amount of easy-to-scavenge wood at a construction site. So you choose to travel light and not bring a weapon. But on that night, bandits are there too. It is snowing and your shelter desperately needs firewood. Do you remain hidden and try to take all you can carry at risk death, or do you flee and have your group freeze to another night? It is a difficult game that leaves little room for error. If one of your group members dies, crippling depression can run through the rest of the survivors and lead to people committing suicide. things quickly go from bad to worse, and is extremely difficult to recover after a minor setback. The longer the game goes, the more risks you will have to take to keep your group safe and fed, so the difficulty ramps up naturally. As a whole, this War of Mine is a game that is greater than the sum of its parts. The dark, hand-drawn art style, the melancholy musical tones, the photoreal character portraits and well-written backstories, and the difficult choices the player must constantly make is truly engrossing. The overall gameplay could have been improved upon with more polished stealth mechanics and less obnoxious inventory space, but it is still a great experience. I feel that this War of Mine is an important game because of its message. So many games make war seem trivial, and loss of life is brushed over without much thought. This is a war game from a completely different angle, an angle I've never seen, and puts you in the likely position of any of us would be if war ever hit home. Not everyone is a soldier. Hi, welcome to Split Screen. My name's Owen Poole, and today we are talking about war in video games. You want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Taylor Bay.
I'm Curtis Minks.
And I'm John Aldens.
All right, so first off, the modern war shooter has been around for quite a while, especially in the newest console generation. So it's sort of been a big quest for realism. Would you agree?
Oh yeah.
I could totally see that. There are definitely points that kind of stretch it, but yeah.
Well, I mean, specific series have their own specific, like, levels of realism. I mean,
Yeah.
Call of Duty is supposedly real, but if you look at that compared to, like, Arma, it's completely different.
But from a gameplay perspective and as gamers, is realism really that important to you when you're looking at a game? Like, when you're looking at a game, does the fact that this is really real, it's got a lot of realism, does that factor into whether you want to play it or not?
For me, I would say no, because I love like Halo stuff, and that's science fiction. Like, if war games are fun, but it doesn't have to be super real, just as long as it's entertaining.
It really just comes down to, for me personally, it's what mood I'm in. Like, if I'm feeling like having a more, like, exciting sort of gameplay session, then maybe realism will help. But if I'm just, like, sitting at home, like, had a long day, I don't really want realism. So.
Yeah, for me, I always thought of video games as kind of like an escapism. So I'm not really sure that the push for ultimate realism is really the right direction to go. But moving on, would you agree that in especially like the Call of Duty franchise that war is almost glorified in a way?
Yeah, it's yeah.
I would say definitely.
Yeah, it very much is. I mean, like, we were talking earlier, and I mentioned that I had seen a statistic that with the sales of Call of Duty games, enlistment is going up.
Right.
And like you can actually follow it. So like when sales of Call of Duty games dropped off, enlistment dropped off.
Especially given the target audience of Call of Duty.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that the realism level of that is playing into it because people are thinking, oh, this is what it
what's
might
actually
be
like.
like, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it might be kind of problematic. And Call of Duty has a tendency to just sort of make everything seem glamorous and great, very Michael Bay-esque, as I like to put it. They love to blow up things.
There's
Oh, yeah.
one thing against that though was there's especially in the newer games there are definitely some like bad scenes, like killing a bunch of pedestrians or like walking in blowing up some random building with like good people in it. So like they're turning away from not just glorifying but also the bad side of it.
But then they're contrasting that. They're contrasting like killing a whole bunch of civilians with let's blow up the Eiffel Tower and it's going to be cool and spectacular and we're doing it with the best
True,
graphics
yeah.
that we can and oh, you're in the middle of an awesome firefight and there's tanks and
That's true.
It seems to be that in the narrative they're trying to weave in a little more like war is bad, people die, things like that. But when you get into the actual nuts and bolts of the gameplay, it's just I'm having fun shooting dudes.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a double-edged thing, where do you really want to be shooting a ton of dudes and have it be fun, but still say that war is kind of bad?
I mean, that's something that Spec Ops: The Line did, is that they actually
That game
Kinda-
makes you feel bad.
Yeah, they sort of played off of that dynamic by making it seem really gamey and really not super serious in its mechanics to kind of lure you in and then slowly toned that
then
back.
then they hit you with the war crimes.
Yeah, then it becomes really horrible.
But you were talking about enlistment rates in Call of Duty. There's a pretty famous game. It actually came out way before Call of Duty in 2004 called America's Army, which is just a legitimate recruitment tool for the U.S. Army. How do you guys feel about them using video games as a means to recruit people?
I'm it's kind of hit and miss for me. It could be good, but it can also be really bad because it can lead, hey, look, Army's good, it's fun and everything, but it's actually really terrible. Like, people come back with PTSD and like injured, and like it's really bad. Yeah. So it can be good, but it can also be bad.
Yeah, you could think it's like the video game, and then you enlist, and it's nothing like it. But they are using video games and stuff to like help with like people who are out of the service with PTSD, which I think is kind of interesting.
And there is the angle that it could be used as a training tool, which is good for the military. We're talking about that war portrayals are kind of glorified. Is that always a negative thing? Like, American Sniper is the big film right now, and people were criticizing it for not having a strong enough anti-war message, which I thought was a little strange because it's a movie. It can say whatever it wants.
Isn't that a movie about a dude who has like a lot of like
300
where he sees a bunch of bad stuff, and then like he has issues with his family back home? And
I haven't seen it yet. Which
From what I know, I haven't seen it either.
I've seen it.
I've
seen it. Yeah. So it's about a guy who goes to war. He goes through 4 tours, has like the most confirmed kills. It's like 300, or not 300. It's like 150 or something as a sniper. And yeah, he has troubles at home and stuff, but nothing too bad. But
it doesn't sound to me like too much glorification. But
well, yeah, during it there's a lot of you spend a lot of time with him and his troops, and they are all kind of like calling him the hero, and like his job does seem kind of like he's popular and famous because he kills all these people. Like, they all call him the hero or the legacy or stuff because, yeah, he's so good at what he does, which is killing people.
I mean, and like within games, like, people want to feel great. They want to feel like they're doing something.
They want to feel entertained and be
like,
joyful about what they're doing, not feel bad. Like, I don't want to play a game that makes me feel bad for playing the game.
Wow,
man,
that's
a
tough balance.
Personally.
Well, I mean, it's like I love Mass Effect, the Mass Effect series, and the reason why I love Mass Effect is not only because of like the interpersonal relationship, but also because like I feel like a hero when I play those games. I feel like I've accomplished something.
Well, speaking of Mass Effect is famous for its moral choice system that has all these branching storylines, and that's not something you usually see in like a Battlefield or a Call of Duty kind of game. You saw it a little bit in Black Ops 2. Cause I remember there's a few choices, and they can like branch the story off a little bit. Should that be something that developers should aspire to have like some choices for the player to make in a war scenario?
I definitely liked that aspect because I didn't play that, but I played like BioShock, which still had like you can to get different endings. You can either like kill the little sisters or save the little sisters, or varying of, and you get different endings. And I personally think that there should be a choice. If you want to do something really bad, get different things compared to doing something good in a war game.
I know that was one criticism of Spec Ops: The Line, because there's, spoiler warning, there is a moment where the only way to go forward is to commit a horrible war crime that ends up killing a couple, like 100 civilians.
Yeah.
And that there's no way around it. You cannot advance the game without doing it.
Yeah, I've tried so many times.
Which was one of a major criticism for that game, in that some people felt that moment was a little hollow because you're railroaded into it.
That scene, I almost say that scene in that game in general was almost just more of a commentary on games in that case than on war itself, because that game was very heavily about very, very anti-war and about the horrors of war. But it also, in a lot of ways, was about kind of the gamification of war that we see in video games. And if you look, there are several moments in that game where you have like choices on how to do things, like how to approach things. Like, oh, your guy's getting hung by these people. Do you shoot the people or do you fire up in the air to scare them away? Like stuff like that. And you're given these choices, but it doesn't matter. And like that's the thing is that you see in games a lot is that you're given choices, but in the end they don't matter because like you're still following a linear path, and choices within games tends to just kind of be a way to make it seem not linear while still being so.
That's how Mass Effect did it, because Mass Effect, it doesn't matter your choices, the end is the same
there's
either
only
way.
gonna be one
It
ending.
always
Blue or
ends.
green.
The
same.
end, blue, green, or red.
Yeah, or sit and watch and everyone dies and you lose.
Yeah, I think that's about it. So this has been the couch discussion at Split Screen. I've been your host, Owen Poole.
I'm Taylor Bay. Sorry.
Curtis Minks again.
And I'm John Algetz.
Peace.